Hi, welcome to Lecture 4, which is on the topics of persuasion and creating job application materials. This lecture is again divided into two parts. The first part will be about persuasion and about the resume, and then the second part will be about the cover letter and the assignment coming up this week. Well, I think we all know what persuasion is. Just remember that it is one of the three main purposes of technical communication, and it's actually very common to a lot of documents that are written as part of technical communication. It's not always that you're trying to sell someone something. Sometimes you're trying to win someone over, or you're trying to convince them that your way of doing something is a better way of doing something. It's part of our work lives, it's part of our private lives, and so it really is a very common purpose of communication. So it's really key in terms of being persuasive that you know what the audience's needs are. If you don't know that, it's hard to persuade your audience. One of the biggest missteps that I see in persuasive communication is that the writer of a document is so focused on his or her own needs that the writer has made that the focus of the document completely. And technical communication is audience oriented. So you may have a purpose or a need, say for example, in writing a job application material, your need is to get hired, but you have to write those materials in a way that anticipates the audience's needs. They're the one who's looking for a new employee. They're the one who's looking for someone who can bring certain skills, traits, or experiences to the jobs. So you have to focus on the audience, not just on yourself. So in addition to knowing what they're looking for, you also kind of have to anticipate the kinds of questions they might have after reading your materials, or what reaction they might have to reading the materials. So first, to be persuasive, you do need to identify your own goal. We just talked a bunch about the audience, but still at the bottom you have to know what your point is first, because that's going to guide a lot of what you put into your communication. You connect with your audience, and there are a lot of ways that you can do that. We often connect with audiences through our relationships, but in a business circumstance we may not be able to do that. Sometimes we connect in a way that taps into power. As a mom, I'm excellent at doing that, but nobody likes that. No one likes being told because I'm the mom. The best kind of way to connect with your audience is to make a rational connection, to assume that they are also intelligent adults who, if they have all the information, will make wise choices. So that is sort of the goal. That's the gold standard connection that we would like to achieve when we can. Oftentimes, facts and information are a way to give our audience sort of the room to make their own decisions. But sometimes facts are not enough, and so we might need to appeal to common goals and values, and those could be things we share as individual human beings, or things that we have in common because we work for the same business, or we are in the same field, or whatever it may be. We also need to recognize when there are barriers that might get in the way of those common goals and values, and some of those barriers could be cultural differences, organizational differences, especially if you're trying to communicate with someone from another organization or business, and they might have different goals or a different history, or you might have be communicating with someone who has different ethical standards, and that could create a barrier as well. Nonetheless, when we are able to use factual evidence, unbiased expert opinion, logical arguments, and statistics to support our claims, we'll go a long way, especially when we can add that into the other elements talked about on this slide already. It's also useful when communicating to ask for a specific response. The audience needs to know what they need to do. People are better able to comply when they know exactly what you want to have happen. So be very clear about that. That kind of goes back to identifying your own goal. Think about the audience's likely reactions and questions. We talked a little bit about that before. It's important to remember that people are often very defensive. They often fear change. They often think that someone who is trying to be persuasive might be manipulative, so they may be skeptical. So sort of recognize not everyone's going to think that your great idea is great, and figure out how you can bring that audience around to your way of looking at things. Another way to bring the audience around is to allow for give and take. Explain your reasoning, offer evidence, and encourage feedback from your audience. They will explain their reasoning and offer their evidence, hopefully, which may lead to a compromise if there is some sort of disagreement here. So you can use active listening techniques to confirm that your audience understands correctly what you are trying to say, to pinpoint any areas of disagreement, and to make a plan for resolution. Sometimes when someone is in disagreement with you, it may be over actually a very minor point, not over the whole big thing. And if you can really just sort of identify what that problem is, you might be able to smooth it out and everyone can be happy at that point. Because at the end of the day, your persuasive communication is only successful if it has worked to persuade your audience. It doesn't matter that you were right all along and they just didn't see the light. It didn't work if you were not able to persuade. Well, I've already alluded to the fact that persuasion is a key element of hunting for a job. However, you don't begin the job search by trying to persuade someone to hire you. You do a little groundwork before then. You look inward first to evaluate your own skills and aptitudes. What can you do? What do you like to do? And what are you actually good at? Those three things are not the same thing. There are things that I can do. I can clean the toilet, but I don't like to clean the toilet. There are things that I might be good at doing that I am not particularly fond of doing, or there might be things that I love to do, but I'm not really very good at it. So really you need those three things, your ability, your enjoyment, and your skill at it to all line up optimally for you to be successful in a certain job venture. Also, you need to learn about the job market generally. So there are a lot of ways that you can do that. It's a great idea to even look in the classified ads of the local newspaper, local in this case being a big city paper like the Houston Chronicle. Even though you may not find a job for you, it gives you a sense about what jobs are out there in the community, who's hiring and who's not hiring, what are people paying. As a student, it's a great idea to get involved in the professional organization for your future occupation. That will let you network with others who are going into that field. It'll probably allow you to benefit from a website or a publication from that professional organization, which will keep you up on current trends in the field. It may give you access to a specialized job listing just for that occupation. It's also something you can put on your resume. Sometimes professors are a way to learn about the job market if your professor is tapped into the particular industry. Another way to learn about the job market is word of mouth. Obviously the internet's a great resource. There are so many ways, but begin by just learning what is out there and what they're looking for, and that will help you when you combine it with your knowledge of your own skills and aptitudes, craft your job search more effectively. When we talk about job application materials in this class, we're specifically talking about a resume and a cover letter or letter of application, but there are other materials that might be involved. Both a resume and a cover letter are persuasive communications, and they need to be relevant to the job you're seeking. Job application materials are not one size fits all. They need to be tailored. They need to look good, because that will make them stand out and appealing. And they really need to be very carefully edited and proofread. The employer's going to assume that these represent you on your best day. And if you've got typos and bad wording and tone problems in your communications, they will not be impressed, and they will hate to imagine what you'd be like when you haven't edited your materials so carefully. You really need to stand out in a positive way and not in a negative way. The résumé is called that because in French, that's the word for a document that gives a brief overview of all of your qualifications. So it's very important to understand that the résumé is not a place for you to list everything you've ever done ever. It is a carefully curated document. That's because employers' screeners will spend literally only seconds on their first review of your document. Now, if you make the cut, then you will get more time later on. But to make the cut, you have got to distill it down to the best material organized in the most effective fashion. So it's highly important that your resume shows strong document design that will help people find the information they're looking for quickly, and that will help your resume, again, stand out in a positive fashion. This is a video here that I don't think you'll be able to view from this because you'll be watching this video. But this video here about resume screening is also linked in Blackboard Learn. So please watch this short video. It explains how the resumes are screened and what kinds of things they're looking for. It's a great little video. Now, all resumes are going to have certain vital information, beginning with your contact information at the top. That's going to be your name, address, phone number, and email address, generally speaking. You may have a statement of objective, but only use that if it is specific. You don't want a statement of objective that is generic, like seeking a great job that pays well and has potential for advancement. Who isn't seeking that job? So tailor your resume to the specific position you are seeking. Employers don't expect you to make 200 copies of one resume and send it out to everyone. They expect you to edit your resume so that it fits your application to that employer. Or you could get rid of the statement of objective completely if you like. The education should be from college onward only. No high school. I repeat, no high school. If you're in college, they will assume that you're a high school graduate. So even if the job requires high school education and it's stipulated in the job requirement, that's probably something you'll indicate on an application form, if at all. They will assume it. List your experiences, whether they are paid employment, volunteer employment, internships, whatever it may be. You're going to include that on your resume. You might include professionally relevant personal data, such as professional licensure. That's really vital in certain fields. Certifications, also vital in other fields. So part of that is knowing what the expectation for your occupation is. And then you might include job relevant or unique interests. Don't put anything down you're not willing to talk about. Don't put things down that are completely commonplace, like that I enjoy shopping or I enjoy video gaming. Those are super typical kinds of things. But sometimes if you've got a hobby that's a little unique that you wouldn't mind talking about, it might make you stand out. Again, if it makes you stand out in a positive way. Or just keep it to things that are more clearly related to the job you're seeking. Sometimes people put references on a resume, but generally speaking, they usually just include a line that references will be available if requested. There are two major resume organization patterns discussed in the textbook: the reverse chronological organization and the functional or skills-based organization. So the page numbers are listed here, and I'm definitely going to point you to look at the textbook for those pages. I'm going to just comment really quickly about a couple of things on those resumes. One thing that you will notice on the reverse chronological resume is that the employment experiences begin with the current position held, and then they go backward in time. The education section in this resume has only one school, but if you have more than one school, perhaps you went to a community college before you came to University of Houston, you would also list your education in reverse chronological. So from your current educational situation, going backwards in time. Again, this is college level only. This particular reverse chronological resume has too much, in my personal opinion, too much personal stuff that's about high school sports and all. I would rather see a little more elaboration on some of the employment experiences. You will notice, though, that on the employment experiences, the person is listing the name of the employer, the city and state, and then they explain the position they have, and then they list their tasks and responsibilities beginning with active verbs. Active verbs are your key to a successful resume. Now turning to the functional resume on page 375, a couple things to notice about that. It's got a completely different organization. This person is highlighting their skills, and they have grouped their skills into 3 categories that the writer has chosen herself. So there's no set skill categories. You have to figure out what's relevant to your experiences. So she has determined 3 categories of skills, and in each of those categories she's listed skills and experiences, again beginning with active verbs. And she's tried to be very specific about her situation. She's tried to add what people sometimes call metrics, the numbers of things that she's done. And if you read them carefully, you'll notice that those skills and experiences were not gained from her paid employment. That's probably why she chose a functional organization. Her paid employment was a job as a personal trainer and a pro shop cashier, which doesn't really relate to these other experiences. The experiences she listed are experiences she gained in her classes and her internships and her contract learning experiences. So it's a great way to present information that you have gained from other than paid employment. And that could include things like personal hobbies and volunteer experiences. So it can be a great way also if you maybe have a gap in employment to put the emphasis on your skills and take the emphasis off sort of just the chronology here. Okay, so a few just general tips here, and I'm not going to read these out loud or anything because you can read them yourself. Some large employers will expect to use computer scanning for a first scan. And so in those cases, you might use a scannable resume, which is a very sort of plain and ugly looking resume, and you sort of search optimize it with keywords. If you know that you need a scannable resume, I encourage you to look at the textbook on page 377 and just read more about scannable resumes. And if you're not sure what the employer wants, find out. You can call the Human Resources Department and you can ask about that. It's very common to have more than one resume for different things that you are able to do, different sort of areas of your life. So certain sort of occupational paths you may want a reverse chronological, and others you might want a functional, and you want to send the most appropriate resume for that specific job. I strongly recommend doing an image search on something like Google for resumes and just look at resumes. Not that you're going to copy the information from them, but just look at what looks good to you. What organization, what style, what layout, what design features, what use of color, and sort of figure out what you think appeals to you and what will be appropriate for your occupation.